This story is the single most legendary piece of lore in the economics profession, but nobody even knows that it exists beyond a small group of economics and finance professors. And since it happened, this story has become synonymous with corruption in data. So now, whenever an economics professor fudges their data, people just bring up this story and they automatically know what they're talking about because this story exemplifies everything that's wrong in academic prestige, data misconduct, and the incentives at play in the academic job market, including who is scrutinized and who is protected, especially when the person being protected has an advisor who won a Nobel Prize. And what makes this story so striking is the gap between the statistical error that we're going to talk about today and the status of the scholar involved. So, at best, this story is a basic statistic data econometric error, and at worst, it's outright fraud. But either way, the person at the center of this story now teaches econometrics at Harvard University. This guy's name is Emil Siri Wardain, and he is now a tenured professor of finance at Harvard. I reached out to him for comment to give him the chance to tell his side of the story, but he did not respond to me. And before Harvard, where this mistake was actually committed, was when he was a PhD student at New York University, where his dissertation committee was chaired by Dr. Robert Engel, who won the 2003 Nobel Prize in Economics. And while he was in the final year of his PhD, he went around to different universities giving job talks presenting his dissertation. And one of those seminars was at the University of Chicago. And somebody in the audience at the University of Chicago pointed out that one of the regressions in his dissertation included a variable called log NAICS. This is what the story is all about, a variable called log NAICS. And I wrote a story about it on my Substack, which you can find in the description of this video, called The Legend of Log NAICS. And in two more tables, he described taking the log of the NAICS industry codes. And if you know what an NAICS industry code is, and if you know what taking a logarithm is, then right away, this problem is immediately apparent to you. You know, it's completely insane that this person was rewarded for this mistake with a job at Harvard. But for readers without a econometrics background, I'm going to explain the problem to you. It's pretty straightforward, actually. NAICS stands for the North American Industry Classification System, which governments use in their official statistics to classify businesses by industry. So a hotel would get one code, and automotive retailers would get another code, and manufacturers would get another code. These numbers are arbitrary labels. They don't measure anything, which is why it makes no sense at all to apply the mathematical transformation of the log function to these arbitrary categories. For example, code 22 refers to utilities, while code 44 refers to retail trade. Since these are arbitrary categories, we can't say that retail trade is twice as large or twice as anything than utilities. It would be as if an engineering PhD student was trying to calculate how much weight a bridge could hold, but rather than using as an input the weight of cars, they took the license plates of cars, applied mathematical functions to those license plates, and used that input to determine how much weight the bridge could hold, right? It wouldn't make any sense, but that's pretty much exactly what happened at Harvard in the finance department. He took the transformation of arbitrary industry codes and put that in his dissertation and used his dissertation to get a job at Harvard. After someone in the audience at Chicago pointed out this mistake, Emil went back to his hotel room that night and reran his analysis by removing log NAICS. And when he did this, his results did not really change. Only a couple decimal points in the table were different. But this overnight correction is impossible to reconcile with statements he made earlier in the job market, where he said his data, which was secret and proprietary, could only be accessed on site in Washington, D.C. So, if he was still in Chicago, how is he able to run the analysis overnight and produce correct tables without flying back to Washington? I asked him about this timeline discrepancy, and he did not answer me. It's a major red flag. But the bigger problem in this data is that since the data is secret and proprietary, No independent researcher can ever reproduce or re-verify his results, meaning it's not really science. Nobody can see how his data was constructed, how he chose his variables, or how he ran regressions. So what we have to do in this case is accept the rest of the paper after the elementary mistake was pointed out on blind faith. And we have to trust that the researcher did everything correctly and honestly and didn't fudge his data to get statistically significant results. Rather than treating this episode as disqualifying, the economics profession showered this paper in awards. It won the NASDAQ Best Paper and Asset Pricing Award, the Top Finance Graduate Award, the prize for Best Job Market Paper in Finance, and the award for Best Dissertation at NYU. Then he gets a job at Harvard thanks to his pedigree and connections and advisor who has a Nobel Prize, and the corrected version of this paper, without log NAICS in it, was published at the Journal of Finance, which is the best finance journal in the world, under a new title. So instead of taking him down and ruining his career, what this botched paper did was become an extraordinary professional success. The moral of the story is that if your advisor has a Nobel Prize in economics and belongs to the same club and the same small network of people who decides who to hire, who to publish, and what awards to give out, even the mistake that would ruin the career of a less well connected scholar can be safely ignored or excused or even celebrated.